Okay, friends, good morning. We are going to go ahead and get started. We're actually running a little bit late. I've got us at about 8:03. Just in full disclosure, we are recording and live streaming this morning on Facebook. So for those of you who are watching from Facebook, either currently or in the future, we welcome you. There will be an opportunity at the end of this morning's presentation to ask questions. So at any time, if you're participating remotely, feel free to type in a question or comment. And when we conclude the presentation, Sarah, who's the city's PR generalist, will be reading your question aloud. If your question or concern is addressed during the duration of this morning's presentation, we will skip over it and try to address those who had questions and comments that were not dealt with during this morning's presentation. For those of you who are in the audience and for those of you who are participating remotely, there is a flyer on the back table. It pertains to an $18 million federal grant request that the City of Saline has into our two United States Senators, Debbie Stabenow and Gary Peters, along with our current member of Congress, Tim Walberg, and our future member of Congress, Debbie Dingell. We will make reference to this. In fact, specifically, I will make reference to this at the conclusion of this morning's presentation. For those of you who are in the audience, there is coffee, water, and donuts to my right. Please help yourself. And unless I'm missing anything, I'm going to turn it over to the city manager in just a moment. So to be very clear, the focus of this morning's town hall is on infrastructure projects that are likely to commence this construction season, so the construction season of 2022, or those that will begin in the subsequent construction season, which is 2023. You will be hearing from the city manager, from our wastewater treatment superintendent, Bill Briggs, our city engineer, Tesha Humphreys, and then subsequently by both, I think, our DPW director, Larry Searles, as well as our Parks and Rec director, Carla Scruggs. I will conclude the presentation. I'll make reference to the handout that's on the back table, and then we will open it up for any questions or concerns. Unless there's anything for me, I am delighted to hand it over to Colleen O'Toole, Saline City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor Marl. So as the mayor stated, today we're going to talk a little bit about projects that we have scheduled for our upcoming fiscal year. So for context, those that are not aware, the city runs its fiscal year between July 1st and June 30th of each year. So it tends to overlap a little bit with the construction season. When we say FY23, sometimes projects get started a little bit earlier than that, but typically it's everything that falls within that fiscal year window. As you can see, there's a significant number of projects scheduled to start in FY23. That may mean that they're this summer, or it may mean that it's a spring start for next year. What we've tried to do with this presentation is call out the ones that we believe may have the biggest impact on residents in terms of general convenience or road closures, or certainly, as you'll see later, when we talk about the wastewater treatment plant, cost impact. What you see on the list of scheduled for FY23 are all projects that either we have put out to bid or are currently in a design phase. So we have reason to believe that those construction activities will occur sometime within that year. When we say planned fiscal year 2024 in the other column, what that means is that we've started the engineering design process or the preliminary concept process, and maybe there's just some due diligence that needs to occur. So for example, when we talk about the US 12 sidewalk project, there's a significant amount of preliminary due diligence that needs to occur to kind of build that rapport with the impacted homeowners before we just go in and begin the construction project. But as I said, we'll go through. I've got members of my leadership team here to talk about those projects that they're directly overseeing, and at the end we'll have an opportunity for questions. So, Engineer Humphreys, if you would.
Okay. So I'm going to start talking first about the Eastbelt sanitary sewer project. This is, as Colleen was saying, about major projects.
Make sure that mic is really close to you and make sure the green light is illuminated.
The green light is on. Oh, that I can hear myself now. So Eastbelt is a sanitary sewer project. As Colleen was saying, as far as a major project, it will have a major impact on traffic because it's along Maple Road. As you can see here, the project limits start right near the tracks, the railroad tracks south of the library on Maple Road, and go all the way south of US 12 along Old Creek south of Henry Street. This is one of the first collection system projects that we're doing to address some capacity and routing issues that we have in our sanitary sewer system. It's a large project, so it's a necessary project. and it will require a complete closure of Maple Road. So that's why it has a large impact on traffic. We're going to be digging through that big hill on Maple Road as you go up Maple. We got to put sewer about 30 feet deep, so the whole road will be closed for a large duration of that project. We've already started talking to the schools because the middle school is right there, so we realize this will have a large impact. We're planning for this construction to start at the earliest in early 2023, likely spring 2023, and then having a duration of the all next summer, fall type project. It involves not only because we're going to be there, the sanitary sewer, the water main. We are filling a few sidewalk gaps on the east side of the road. There's a traffic signal there at Clark. So that is by far the biggest capital project that we're looking at in this time frame. The next project on the list is Clark Street, which is directly adjacent to this. So at the so Maple and Clark intersect. Maple's north-south, Clark east-west. Clark Street is a project that we have received about $500,000 in funding, or a little more than from the federal government. And so we're coordinating this. We just started design on this one. This one's going to be this just impacts a lot of residents. There's a lot of residents that live along Clark Street between Maple and Harris. Next on the list, and this is one that's actually starting this summer. This is ultimately a storm sewer project that we're doing to reroute some storm and capacity similar and condition issues. This is located very near Pleasant Ridge Elementary and will be starting right after school starts in June of this year. The project is basically, we're installing 42-inch storm pipe south along Harris Street and then west along Pleasant Ridge over to Ann Arbor. So this is the route. This will impact traffic locally. There will be one-way traffic throughout the duration of this construction. We will be hosting a project specific about this. This is more specific to this neighborhood in the coming months because we're getting ready for construction to start here in June.
Well, just in time to discuss the water clarity topics. So specific activities under our broader water clarity initiative, numerous activities ongoing. We'll have Director Searles weigh in.
Well, since it's on the screen, we'll talk first about the water lining job on Michigan Avenue. They've taken the old main out of service. They're going to clean the inside up, put a poly liner in that's going to prevent tuberculation. We also have the valve assessment program coming where they're going to touch all the valves in the city, give us a condition assessment, and also help us locate anything that we don't have mapped. That's going to be done using a technology platform so that we're getting actual GPS coordinates on all of our valves going forward. That'll help us keep a continual valve turning program going. We have the water meter program coming, which that'll put new meters in the houses, but also allow us to keep up to the minute reads, which will help us identify leaks and any issues in the house. The residents can have their own dashboard and control the water from their portable device or desktop, whichever they prefer. The big key for that, for water clarity, is it has a communications module. So we'll be able to track and record all the issues that we have from individual homes a little easier than we have now. That will help us problem solve ahead of problems, hopefully going forward, so that we're not waiting for discolored water episode or a couple continual problems. We'll hopefully stay ahead of it.
I'll jump in just quickly on the hydraulic model. One of the things as far as the valve assessment program and one of the things towards water quality that we're really making good progress on is that we've started calibration of our hydraulic model and used that to identify areas of our system that likely have partially closed or fully closed valves. And then when we create dead ends in our system, we're not allowing water to properly flow, and it exacerbates our water quality issues. And so I was just pleased to see that the hypothesis that I formed when I first started was somewhat verified by the field work that we've done so far. And I guess I'm saying bear with us, it's a process. Actually, more of our system was identified as partially closed than I expected. So this valve assessment program that we're starting is critical to make sure all of our valves are operational and we can access them for proper preventative maintenance of our distribution systems. So I'm pleased with the progress. At the same time, we've had to pause the reliability study, though, so we can go get all these valves open, so we can recalibrate the model to what our system is actually capable of.
And also to add to that, we're using that data from the field work to schedule the valve assessment program to go hit the areas that already were identified as obvious weaknesses in the flow. The asset inventory, we have a lot of efforts going into our next budget to really get a value, condition, and location of all of the assets for the utilities, including the roads. The road network will live in a database that we can access, and we can really start getting into better capital planning. We'll be able to weigh projects where we need to be versus where we think we need to be based on all of the utility metrics, and that's something that I'm pretty excited about. We'll have a much better, more efficient capital plan.
Yep, I agree. And part of the valve assessment, we are collecting a lot of this data for our valves. The valves, we just went over probably 19 pieces of data that we're going to collect while we're out there. So I think that's a great lead, and I think the next slide might be about roads.
And one more thing on the tracking complaints. We have taken and made a data point on every single complaint, and we've actually been able to, at least a few times, get into those monthly flushing spots ahead of the bigger problem. So we've eliminated a few of our issues prior to them being issues.
Great. Thank you very much. And one thing we'll reiterate for the public, if you continue to experience any water clarity issues, please use our survey tool. As Director Searles noted, we do use that information to make decisions about where we are performing flushing and use those data points to help us identify system improvements in the future. I would also add, if this is your issue, the thing you're most concerned about, please reach out to Public Relations Generalist Sarah Massey to get added to our newsletter list. Her email address is smassey@cityofsaline.org. She'd be happy to add you to that list so that you receive our recurring newsletter on this topic exclusively.
On the screen is the map for the initial joint crack sealing efforts for this year. So they price by pound of material, so there may be more added to the map. The joint sealing helps keep moisture out from under the asphalt. The moisture is what hurts us in the freeze-thaw cycle, causing potholes. We're gonna continue this program going forward, well, perpetually. It's just a good, low-cost maintenance to prolong the life of the asphalt.
I guess I'll talk about this one. This is a larger project that's necessary for the maintenance of our collection system. We have 7 pump stations throughout our project, and a majority of this project is mechanical upgrades primarily at 2 of our major pump stations. But we're also touching, as the screen shows, numerous sites remotely located in our collection and distribution system. We're doing electrical upgrades, SCADA, which stands for Supervisory Control and Data Acquisition upgrades at numerous stations throughout the site, just so we can communicate. So as far as the public's concern, you will see work at these sites. The biggest will be at the Maplewood Pump Station site, which is at Maple, just north of Woodland, and on Woodland Drive, near Industrial, just south of Industrial, is where the largest work. We're going to be replacing this wet well. So that work will be starting this fall. And we do have there is a link to this on our website for more information. We're just starting this project up, doing submittals and such.
Director Scruggs?
Oh, good morning, everyone. I'm really excited to talk about this project. This is a project that has been kind of in the thought process for the past few years, and we've been working hard to get the funding in order to do this. This is a project that would create a walkway from the parking lot at Mill Pond, like where the pavilions are, all the way out south to Michigan Ave. So creating a lot of new access to the park, especially for those in need of that have mobility issues, they can, walk the park, get out to the dog park, and get all the way out to Michigan Ave, providing some access to the water, some kayak launch, some overlooks for viewing, observation, for fishing, and things like that. We've already secured, we did the design and engineering from a grant from Washtenaw County, the Connecting Communities grant. They did that. We had Manic Smith Group actually did all the design work and engineering. And we have already secured a $200,000 grant from Washtenaw County Connecting Communities grant for construction. We have applied for a DNR grant through the Recreation Passport grant. Unfortunately, we were denied that, but we're going to continue to knock on the door again. And we have also, and we have not heard yet, but the Community Foundation for Southeast Michigan, we've applied for a grant for that. We should hear, hopefully May or June of this year, we should find out if we get some funding from that. But we're continuing to knock on every door possible to secure the funding for this project. So it's really exciting. It's going to add a lot of value to the Mill Pond Park. This is another exciting project. So in 1999, the Reddy's Foundation, which is a local foundation, they granted us money to install this play structure. It's very old. It's starting to deteriorate. So we have already gotten approval to replace this. So we have already ordered a replacement. It's going to fit in the same footprint, kind of that same age range, which is a 5 to 12-year-old climbing structure. And we appreciate the Reddy's Foundation for providing that originally, but it's time for us to replace that. So we're just waiting for delivery, and we'll get that installed as soon as it gets here.
Good morning. So the wastewater treatment plant upgrades, which I'm sure you've heard some conversations about in the past, we are looking at rehabilitating many existing processes and some failing processes at the wastewater treatment plant, bring them up to what we need to just maintain what's going on in the city right now. Of course, we do have an administrative consent order that's pushing this pretty hard too. So it's not something we can just walk away from. This is something that needs to be done. And as you can see on the slide, the green areas are pretty much the different places on the plant that are going to either receive new construction or rehab. Included in this is going to be something to help us handle high flows during storm events. Up in the left-hand corner of that circle up there is the equalization basin, equalization tank that will help divert some flow through the wastewater plant during the storm event so that we can treat it more effectively instead of having it push through the plant because it has to go somewhere. Next to that is a rectangular area, some aeration that's going to go in, and we hope that, well, we know that that will replace the RBCs. Currently, the RBCs are in a state of going to need some repair, I'm afraid in the future, and I don't think anybody's putting RBCs in anymore. They're pretty much doing aeration just because of the way RBCs work, and I won't go into the deep detail on that. Then we're adding clarifiers, a primary clarifier and a secondary clarifier to help handle the flows and to make treatment more viable. One of the main things we're putting in down in the left-hand corner, that little green box down there, is a fine bar screen, which will remove probably 99% of the debris that gets into a wastewater plant that causes problems with pumps. We're talking about materials that gets flushed down the toilet that probably shouldn't be flushed down the toilet. Well, we call them rags, but they're just cloth materials that end up down there. The wipes that say flushable, yeah, they're flushable, but they don't biodegrade. So we have to remove them one way or another. If we don't remove them ahead of the plant, then they cause problems in the plant. So this first phase of the project, like I say, will be these these important improvements. We're not talking cheap money here. You can see the dollar amount up there at $62 million. That's just for the first phase, and that's probably, we're expecting maybe 2 years of construction time and potentially some phases after that.
Thank you, and I'll just add to that, no community in Michigan certainly is exempt from these type of aging infrastructure issues. The work that we're looking at here isn't fancy, it's not a lot of bells and whistles. This is the work that needs to be done to make sure that we are providing safe sanitary services for the residents of Saline. We understand that it's a significant undertaking. Unfortunately, several years of deferred maintenance have put us in this position, and we need to make a significant investment to make sure that we are safeguarding the future for existing Salinians and doing our due diligence to meet the state standards in terms of the safety compliance that we have for the discharge of this wastewater. That goes into public waterways, and we take that responsibility very seriously. We will have this topic touched on again at the May 2nd City Council meeting, the first meeting in May. Regarding, we're going to get updates on the topics that we discussed today and other construction topics as they come up, both this fiscal year and next. We now have a section on our city website. If you haven't seen the new city website yet, please take the time to check it out. Let us know your feedback. We're very interested to hear from residents if they feel that it's easier for them to navigate or not, or what information they feel is missing. But underneath the Department of Public Works homepage, you will find a list of construction projects. These are ones that at this point have been actually bid and are formally moving forward. So there'll be updates on those as the projects progress. I'd like to thank everyone who joined me this morning. For those that are interested, this is the list of the contact information for everyone that spoke here today. And I will turn it over to Mayor Marl and PR Generalist Massey for questions.
City Manager, we're trying to trouble you to go back to the last substantive slide. Yes, correct. Very good. So, thank you all for the presentation this morning. Again, to make reference to the documents that are on the back table, and to an earlier point, the description sheet and the supplemental letter that I'm referencing now will be copied and pasted into the comment section on Facebook. So if you're watching us or will be watching us on Facebook, please look for those documents. So the wastewater treatment rehabilitation project, as is enumerated on the screen behind me, the cost is now approximately $62 million. Staff can correct me, but a year ago when we did an analysis, it was in the mid-40s. Is that correct?
Correct.
So in a year's time, it has grown by not quite 20 million, but it has grown significantly. And I think that's largely due to supply chain issues and burgeoning inflation over the past year and a half. To make a long story short, in order to contain those costs, to expedite necessary repairs, and for Saline to derive the appropriate funding that I think we need to maintain our infrastructure, we are calling on our community stakeholders and residents to assist us in advocating for federal funds to rehabilitate our wastewater treatment plant. So we have put in a request through Senator Peters, Senator Stabenow, Congressman Wahlberg, and Congresswoman Dingell for $18 million. And we've also received letters of support from the Saline Area Chamber of Commerce, from Saline Area Social Services, from Saline Area Schools, and from Saline Main Street. The document that you should have in front of you, or will see on your screen, provides instruction, provides contact information for all of the 4 federal elected officials that I just referenced, and then there is a sample letter in the back, which you are free to modify and change as you deem appropriate. I'll also note that every single member of council, myself included, has also written letters to our federal elected officials. So, long story short, this grant request will likely not be effective. It is unlikely that it will be approved unless there is a groundswell of support from Saline residents such as yourselves. So if you're in the audience, if you're watching at home, I hope you'll do your part. I hope you'll consider sending a letter or an email to all 4 of the individuals referenced before. Again, that's Wahlberg, Dingell, Peters, and Stabenow. With that, we will open it up for questions. I'm going to call upon my council colleague, Mr. Gearbaugh, to handle the cordless mic. Make sure it's turned on there, Dean. And I will acknowledge we have 2 of my council colleagues with us this morning, Mayor Pro Tem Gearbaugh and Councilmember Dillon. We will jump back and forth between questions from those participating remotely and those who are in the audience this morning. Why don't I start in the back, and I will defer to our PR generalist, Sarah Massey. I'll also note for anybody in the audience or anybody who's watching at home, if you want a copy of this PowerPoint, please feel free to email or call Sarah, and she would be delighted to send it to you. Sarah, do we have any questions in the back? None at this time, okay? Are there any questions from those in the audience? Please, Joan, wait till you get the microphone.
We are immediately behind or in front of the wastewater treatment plant. And I guess my question is, 18 million doesn't sound like much. Is there a reason why we're not requesting more?
Certainly. Well, to be frank, in terms of federal appropriations that we saw approved this current fiscal year, really the high end was 5 million. So 18 million is already a fairly significant ask in terms of what we've seen the federal government do in terms of appropriations for other communities, particularly of our size. The hope is with a significant input from city residents and that extensive kind of lobbying push, so to speak, that we can achieve 18 million. And what I would say is while 18 million seems like only a fraction of that $62 million project, it has a very tangible impact on what it means that we need to raise rates by. That would potentially eliminate the need to raise rates at all in the, not this fiscal year, but the next fiscal year, or enable us to reduce the rate increase that we experienced for this year, which, as some of you may know, we're looking at about $81 a quarter between both water and sewer this year.
That's an excellent question, Joan. Let me add this because I failed to mention it earlier. So I'll give you a little bit of the backstory here. So it was actually Senator Gary Peters' office who contacted my office probably about a month ago now, indicating that his staff was soliciting projects from local municipalities. And the funding source is President Biden's new infrastructure statute. And so what was communicated to us via Senator Peters' office is that this first round of funding will be actually written into the federal appropriation bill. Subsequent to that, most of the dollars will be turned over to individual states. So the point being is we've applied for 18 million through the federal government. We will have a second bite at the apple for additional funding, not just for our wastewater treatment plant, but for roads and for dams and bridges and for non-motorized pathways once those dollars are allocated and earmarked to each of the states, including the state of Michigan. Let me defer back to Sarah. Sarah, any questions or comments online? There are none. Additional questions or comments from those in the audience this morning?
Mayor, I'd like to make one comment.
Please.
As we talk about additional support and that type of thing, we are eligible for the state revolving loan fund, which is a lower rate type of interest. And then we're also eligible for potentially other grants if we can get ourselves to be qualified for them. Unfortunately, because of our median income and some other aspects, we are not available for those, but we can hope that maybe we can come about from another angle and potentially get more funds in. So we're not going to close the door on any source that we can potentially get, but fortunately we are eligible for some low interest loans and things that we wouldn't have to go out to the public market and necessarily get a higher rate.
Yeah.
Absolutely, that's a great point. The funding source that we're looking at for the wastewater treatment plant is a low interest rate state revolving fund loan that allows us to spread that cost over 30 years, which is significantly better than what we would experience, for example, in a bond market.
But I think Mr. Gearbaugh, Mayor Pro Tem Gearbaugh's point is well taken, which is it is a goal of mine personally, the City Council more broadly, to aggressively compete for every grant dollar that is available for funding of vital municipal services. So several were mentioned earlier this morning. In addition to the 18 million, we've derived funding for the Mill Pond Riverwalk. Was also mentioned or alluded to the Woodland Drive pump station. I believe it was through Congressman Wahlberg that we got approximately $500,000 to upgrade that, which is, again, vital infrastructure. But, again, aggressively competing for grant dollars is a goal of mine personally and the city's more broadly, and we're going to continue to explore and apply for every avenue of funding. Mr. Roth.
We've seen the price raise in the last 2 years from what was projected. I'm looking at the phase one says it's going to start the spring of 2024. Is it possible we can start earlier and have some savings? Because in 2024 and 25, that price may even go up even higher. So wouldn't it be to our advantage to start ASAP?
Certainly, the issue at hand is the funding source that we're using. The state revolving fund has a very set formula for when you can apply and when funds are released. They also require some preliminary studies be completed prior to applying, and we just finalized those studies in January of this year. It took about 15 months or so to get through all of that preliminary application material for the state. We just submitted our draft project plan. We'll submit a final project plan. Residents will actually see a public notice going in the newspaper probably early May for a meeting later in May that outlines very specifically what that project plan is. But that was the most accelerated timeline that we could follow if we wanted to use the state as a source of funding. And realistically, with how competitive, more competitive they are than the broader bond market in terms of interest rates and the term of a loan, that makes the most financial sense.
Back to you, Sarah. Any questions or comments online? No? Okay. Any additional comments or questions from those in the audience?
One question, could you clarify, with phase one and, the $62 million price tag, that partially because we've moved aeration into an earlier phase, correct?
Correct. So the aeration component was originally planned for phase two. That replaces an existing process that we have identified, and the state, through their agency, Eagle, has identified as, unfortunately, starting to fail. That's our RBCs, rotating biological contactor, so close. What we've identified as a longer-term solution is a replacement for those, which is an aeration unit. So that did get moved up specifically because of our desire to continue to maintain state compliance, which is the overall goal of this project, is to ensure that we're operating that facility as safely as possible.
And also, as we're working with Eagle, our response times and things that are going back and forth with them are delayed as a result of changeover and turnovers in Eagle, so we're getting information a little bit at the last minute and having to accommodate for those changes. So we're hoping to be able to not only move this forward quickly, but also be able to comply as soon as we get the things from Eagle. So it's kind of a back and forth that we're really working against that, we're not exactly sure what Eagle wants. We're trying to get as much clarification as we can.
Glenna, please, wait till you get the microphone. Go ahead.
So Dean, what you just said about meeting their deadlines, wasn't there a deadline real soon that we were supposed to be meeting that we're not able to meet? Have you gotten a exemption because of contingencies of time and material and all that? Is that something that you've gotten an answer?
So currently, the city is in full compliance with its administrative consent order. We have submitted all of the project plans that we needed to in this fashion, in a timely fashion, and met those deadlines. Part of that process is submitting for this state revolving fund loan dollars, and we are on track for that. So the final project plan is due the beginning of May, and we have everything that we need in place to submit that project plan.
I thought I read something about the biological.
Oh, certainly, yes. So there is an existing deficiency with one of the RBCs. That means that in May, when our limits change, we may be in violation. Yes, we do have the repair identified for that. We're just waiting on the materials to arrive. So Eagle is aware of that situation. We don't expect that would put us in non-compliance with the administrative consent order, but obviously we want to see that repair occur as expeditiously as possible.
Thank you, that's what I was remembering.
Good question, Glenna. Additional, we got one in the back.
All right, this is from Todd. He asks, is there a forecast of the rate increases and timing available for review?
Yes, there is. They've been shared in the city's previous agenda packets on this subject. They'll be shared again in the May 2nd packet, but I'd be happy to make sure that PR journalist Massey has a copy of those as well. So anyone who wants to reach out to her directly could receive a copy.
And it is the chair's expectation that city council vote on and approve water and sewer rates at our next meeting for the subsequent fiscal year. That next meeting is May the 2nd. It begins at 7 p.m. here in council chambers. It will be live streamed on Facebook. You may also attend in person. If you have questions and comments, you will be afforded the opportunity to comment twice, both at the beginning of the meeting and at the conclusion. If you're unable to attend, you may provide written comments, and the clerk would be delighted to read those into the public record.
And those minutes and agendas are available on our website, so you can click on that right at the homepage and drill down into the last work sessions that we've had.
Correct. Minutes on demand. All of our agendas and support material for not only city council, but every board and commission are available for distribution and review by the public. Councilmember Dillon.
Thank you. Just quickly, this is probably for Mr. Briggs. In the near term, do we have a plan in place for odor abatement? Now that the weather is starting to turn warm, I have noticed that there's been a bit of an uptick in odor complaints. And so I know it's going to be addressed big picture as part of the rehabilitation of the plant. But in the near term, is there something that you can speak to for people to expect, especially through the summer?
Certainly. Of course, when construction starts, who knows what's going to happen with the odors, because things are going to be put online, or taken offline, put online. So depending on how the construction itself goes will make a difference in what happens with odors there. Currently, all our odor systems are up and running, but we do have one tank, one clarifier that we're pumping down. And we're pumping the sludge out of the bottom of this because the piping that is supposed to move the sludge is not letting us do that. So the idea is to pull that tank down all the way and have that line cleaned, and then hopefully televise it so we can see what's going on with it. And from that, determine what kind of repairs we may need to make that operational for the next couple of years while this construction project goes on. So as a matter of fact, we have, as we're pulling that clarifier down, part of the problem is that we're not putting material in and out of there. So the sludge that's in that tank is actually turning septic, and that will cause some odors. And I'm very afraid this weekend with the high temperatures, there's going to be a considerable amount of odor coming off of that. And it's going to take us probably another week or so at least to get that tank pumped empty. When the temperatures go down, we'll probably have less odor, but with the warmer temperatures this weekend, Saturday and Sunday, I'm afraid we're going to have some odors come off of there, and there's really nothing we can do about it at this point.
But you think by the end of next week it could be cleared?
I hope so, yes. I hope we get the tank pumped down that much by the end of next week so that we can perform that work on it.
Good. Sarah, back to you. Any questions, comments online? No? Okay. Any additional questions from those in the audience? I changed, or I went back to our I think, second to last slide, which is contact information for all of our key staff members, specifically those who presented this morning. Please reach out to them if you have any questions or concerns. Of course, please feel free to reach out to my office anytime you have a question, concern, either related to infrastructure or anything that falls within our municipal portfolio. Again, today's town hall was recorded and will be shared on Facebook. And I guess, I beat this dog to death, folks, but I'm going to say it one more time. We would really like to receive federal funds to support the rehabilitation and modernization of our wastewater treatment plant. We've done our part. We've submitted every kind of documentation and support letter that's required and necessary. Now we need you as citizens to do your part. So please consider writing or emailing your current member of Congress, your future member of Congress, and your 2 United States senators. Again, this type of grant request will only be successful if there's a groundswell of support from Saline community residents. With that, unless there are final questions, again, for those of you who are with us in person this morning, help yourself to some additional refreshments, coffee, donuts, some juice and water. I believe most of the staff members will be sticking around for a few minutes, so if you do have questions, feel free to follow up with them. Thank you so much, and we look forward to seeing you at our next Town Hall Coffee Hour event. Appreciate it. Bye-bye.